Hello, hello to all of our change makers. And it's been a while since we've been in the flow of doing a lot of interviews, but we're getting back into it. And today I am delighted to be able to share with you my new friend, Amy. Amy, tell people a little bit about who you are and what you do and what makes you so amazing.
Aw, thank you so much. Well, I'm actually a former New York City girl who lives on an organic farm in Vermont. And I grew up with a very unusual mom and stepfather. He was a chef and she was really into nutrition. So I ate really well, learned how to cook from scratch, probably from the age of 8.
Hmm.
And I carried that through into my adult life, had worked at a health food store. But a big turning point moment for me was when I was pregnant with my daughter 33 years ago. And I was in a health food store and I came across this little paperback book called The Non-Toxic Baby. And reading it as I'm standing there, and I'm just shocked to see that there are all these toxic chemicals in everyday household products, including baby products. And I
Ooh.
thought, how could this be legal, first of all? And why isn't anyone talking about this? And what do I do? Because I was trying to do everything right, as a pregnant mom.
Right.
So that really catalyzed me into researching everything and looking at whatever sources of information I could find about how to get the toxins out of my food, my home. And I'd always been into holistic health anyway, as a kind of a preventative measure. So I made all these changes in my own home, and then I started sharing it with my community. And I was living in Massachusetts at the time, and I got a whole uproar going in the local newspaper, and then did some community events. And then I moved to Vermont, and I met my now husband, Dave, who's an organic farmer, which was kind of a
Nice.
perfect match, according to my mom. When she saw his profile on Match.com, she said, "Oh my gosh, a good looking organic farmer and a green living expert. How perfect." Um, and so once I moved here, I actually ended up getting this opportunity to be the technical editor for the Green Living for Dummies book, which was really fun. And I was hired by Seventh Generation to lead a nonprofit called the Household Toxins Institute. So those were kind of my early credibility pieces. But mostly, I have just been sharing the message with thousands of people around how to not only get rid of the toxins and also embrace holistic health, how to think about these topics in a way that teaches us how to do it for ourselves so we don't have to depend upon experts. And
Mhm.
so I told you the story before we got on, this whole idea of discernment, of looking at, I go to Costco once a month and I find this beautiful frozen organic broccoli in these bags. I take it home and it's all in these individual plastic bags and it says to microwave or boil them. I'm thinking, why would I destroy this beautiful broccoli by doing that to it? And so that's where the discernment comes in, where I think, how many people are just overwhelmed by such conflicting information and, products that show up in health food stores that aren't healthy, but we assume that
Hmm.
they are, right? And so
Yes.
that's really where I've been, I give people the information for sure, but I'm really starting to focus more on helping people think these things through so they become their own green living expert. And so
Wow.
I've been hosting for the last a little bit over a year now. I've got this Green Living Now podcast, and
Mhm.
I have had the most amazing conversations with people that are either sustainable agriculture, whether they're farmers or mushroom foragers, or maybe they're holistic doctors or people that have healed themselves from something that Western medicine wasn't able to help them with. And they've discovered, how to use green living and holistic health to their advantage and heal from. A lot of people have actually
Mhm.
come back from almost dead that I've talked to,
Yes,
believe it or not.
I believe it.
So yeah, that's some of what I've been doing.
Wow,
Yeah.
wow. So you've been when I saw one of your posts, you were talking about thinking about helping people to be able to do like a kitchen reset, was that it?
Yeah. So for me, and I think for a lot of us women, kitchens seem to be sort of the heart of the home. And so I
Mhm.
was thinking about a way of doing like a 10-day kitchen reset that would include at least one live get together on Zoom, but it would
Mhm.
be steps towards getting rid of the toxins in your kitchen and also thinking about these things in a way, like I said, that teaches discernment, that helps us figure out how to do this for ourselves and how to get rid of the greenwashing and not fall for these labels that mean nothing. I mean, I even wrote an ebook on, I think I looked at over 100, I think it was about 100 different food labels and figured out which ones actually had a meaning that was worth paying attention to, which ones were sort of helpful, and which ones were complete junk, like natural or free range or non-toxic. Um, yeah, so I'm looking at doing that and just kind of curious if that's something that people feel that would be helpful. So if
Mm.
anybody's, thinking that that sounds like they'd like more information, I'd love to talk to them about it.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I don't think people are aware enough about how so many of these legal labels are so misleading. I mean,
Oh,
even the word organic is hard to be trusted now, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and so I look at it as, we have this small organic farm, right? Certified
Right.
organic, but I see big ag organic and I see,
Mhm.
big companies that sell both organic and conventional bananas, for example. So I always think, well, how do I know that those bananas with the sticker that says organic are really the organic ones? How easy would it be to to label them wrong? And do I trust a big company that's doing both? Right? I
Yeah.
The other thing that's gotten really hard is there have been so many wonderful independent, like, organic food companies or vitamin companies or, different types of product companies that become successful and then they're bought out by a big corporate entity. And so
Yes.
that's the other piece of, okay, so do I really trust Tom's of Maine toothpaste now? Or,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
any number of these products that, maybe some of the formulations have changed. Maybe they're cutting corners. And so it's become much more top of mind, I'd say, for a lot of us consumers, but also so much more confusion. And I think
Mhm.
a lot of people think, well, gosh, everything causes cancer, so I can't focus on one more thing, or is this going to really make a difference? Like, what are the most important things that I should do first? And one of the things I always tell people with for that question is get rid of anything that has synthetic fragrance, like, especially your
Mm.
laundry products, because you're with
Yes.
that 24/7, in your
Yep.
clothes, in your bedding. I mean, I walk my dogs up the road and I smell my neighbor's laundry stuff coming out of the vent, and I'm like, whoa, overwhelmed.
Yep. I can't even stand to walk down an aisle in a grocery
I
store with all that
know.
stuff.
Now, isn't that an amazing thing that these are sealed bottles, on these shelves, and yet we can smell it through the bottles.
Yes.
It's wild.
Scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
Holy cow. Wow. So it sounds like you are extremely knowledgeable in a lot of different holistic kinds of things. So,
Mm.
I mean, are you still, you mentioned you had been hired by some rather interesting companies to do some things. Are you still working with them?
No, that was a one-year gig, and honestly, I got to the point where I felt like the conflict of interest was too strong because the funding was originally from the founder of Seventh Generation, and I was developing this independent board of advisors, and we were trying to raise money to hire toxicologists to test the natural products first, and I felt like, "This is not gonna fly." I'm not gonna listen to the advice of, a company that's paying for this nonprofit to exist. So we parted ways, but since then I've developed online courses and the podcast, like I mentioned, and co-running the farm with my husband, but also doing these really fun food and farm tours that are experiential. That
Ah,
I've learned so much from people that have been guests on my farm. Um, and they walk away telling me, well, perfect example, I had a French family with 3 kids under the age of 12, none of whom spoke English, and the parents kinda pulled me aside and said, "Don't be offended, but the kids don't like vegetables, so they're probably not gonna eat the lunch." I thought, "Oh, this is gonna be interesting." But part of the tour is taking people through the fields and tasting things right off the plants, which is like nothing else. I mean, you can't get that in a store, right? And
mm.
so they started eating green beans and cherry tomatoes and even kale. and then they ate the entire lunch. And I was just blown away, and the parents were sitting there kind of bug-eyed, and then they called me, or no, they wrote me an email a week later, and they said, "You know what? Our kids are actually eating vegetables now, as long as we tell them that they're like Amy and Dave's." So, I
I
mean, I've
love
had so many experiences like that where especially with kids that I'm told, "Oh, the kids don't like vegetables," and then they eat everything.
it.
And they have
Wow.
this experience where they're actually seeing where food is grown, they're understanding what it means to actually, grow organic, that it's not just a label claim, at least not, with a
Not with
small
you.
family farm. It's a whole system.
Wow, wow,
Yeah.
I love that, and that's so important because so many kids are clueless about where any of the food comes from, they just
Right.
think it comes from the grocery store and
That's
that's
exactly
it.
right. Yeah. I remember when my daughter was little, I took her to a Farmers Helpers program at an Audubon, and I was shocked to see that kids thought milk came from a carton. They had no idea that cows actually produce milk, and it was such a great course because they'd have the kids collect eggs, and then we'd go make pancakes, or they'd milk a cow and turn it into, cheese, and I I was like a kid at heart, like, I couldn't wait to participate with them. It was awesome.
Uh, wow, wow, wow,
Yeah.
wow. Well, tell people, you said you've got some courses and stuff that you've done online. Are they still available? What kind of courses?
I'm actually transitioning them to a new platform, but yes, they are going to be available again. One of them is called Clean Eating Mastery, and it's basically everything I've learned about healthy food and what that means. And it's a combination of video and quizzes and text, and it gives people really all the information that they need to figure out how to eat healthy. So it includes my comprehensive label ebook. It includes my 37 tips for how to shop um, for organic food on a budget because that's a big concern of a lot of folks. So that's
Nice.
one. And then I've got a non-toxic home room by room guide.
Ooh,
I've got
nice.
two organic gardening books. One's a kind of a big comprehensive one that has a lot of videos of my husband who I caught doing all these different tasks. Whether it's how he makes his onions get bigger or what he does to create these really healthy tomatoes, all this really cool, like live footage. And so there's that big course, and then there's a shorter one for people that, don't want to get into too much detail, but they just want to get some basic stuff done. And then
Mhm.
I have one that's called the Green Living Essentials, which is sort of encompasses the non-toxic home, the clean eating mastery, and a holistic health piece. So those will be
Wow.
back online pretty soon. But for now, it's the podcast. The hopefully the kitchen reset if it seems like that's a fit. And then I'm doing some retreats again. I've done retreats
Mm,
before. And so we're doing, my friend Andrea, who's a therapist, and I are doing some women's retreats. And
nice.
the first one will be May 1st through the 3rd, somewhere in southern Vermont. And it's going to be a lot around how to detox your life, not just food and household products, but from, the craziness of the news or difficult people in our lives, and really understanding that discernment piece. Like, how do we think in a different way? And how do we settle our nervous system? Because if we're all in flight or flight mode all the time, it's really hard to make decisions.
It is, it
So
is.
that's gonna be kind of a reset time, for that weekend, and we're gonna offer more, over the course of the summer and into the fall.
Oh, that sounds delightful. Just wonderful, the different things you've got going on.
Thank
Whew,
you.
so needed.
Thank
I
you.
love it. I love it. My goodness. Well, where can they? It sounds like you're still doing the podcast. Where can people find
Yes.
that?
So if you go to my website, greenlivingnow.com, you'll see the page for the podcast, and it'll have every podcast that I've done linked on there. So you can either watch it on YouTube or you can watch it or listen to it rather on your favorite podcast platform. And then the retreat's going to be on there. I've got to update that page because this is a new thing that we're rolling out. And then the kitchen reset will be on there as well. So if anybody wants more information about those things, just email me. I'm amy@greenlivingnow.com.
Greenlivingnow.com. Simple
Yeah.
enough. Gotta
Yeah.
love it. Cool
Thank you.
deal. Well, is there anything?
Actually, let me
Go
just
ahead.
say one more thing. I'm sorry, Cheyenne.
Yeah.
I have a free newsletter called Notes from the Rebellion, because I coined
I
this
like
term
that.
elegant rebellion. So if people want to get on that list and get, really interesting information, I give a lot of content as well as talk about what podcast is happening each week. So that's a great, 1 to 2 emails max a week newsletter. So people can grab that. That's on the website too.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, is there anything else in your wonderful pile of knowledge you've got that pops to mind that you'd like to share today, or any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, I think what I really want people to come away with is that we can take our power back, that we don't have to feel like we're victims, that, we can choose what we want to eat and ideally growing it ourselves, even if it's just basil on a sunny windowsill, right? There's
Mhm.
nothing like growing your own food and watching a seed turn into an amazing plant. So that's one thing. And that there are plenty of us who want exactly the kind of mission that you're talking about, with peace and holistic health and wellness. And I think there's more of us that want that, and it's becoming a much more mainstream thing. We just have to kind of clear the clutter and the misinformation and the greenwashing, and get clarity about what is the next step. And we don't have to do it all at once, one step at a time, build that momentum, maybe, join with other friends, family, neighbors, make it more of a community effort is also another great way.
Absolutely. One of my favorite phrases is, "We are the miracles we're looking for."
Ooh, I like that. Yeah, that's really good.
It's
Yeah,
absolutely the truth. We believe that everybody was born with a piece of a super puzzle, that if we were all busy building our piece of the puzzle, we'd be living on a planet with health, wealth, and peace for all. And the fact
yeah.
that we're not seeing much of that right now just says there's too many people still sitting on their puzzle piece.
Yes, I think that's true, and I think maybe they're the loudest voices, and that makes it look like it's skewed in that direction. But I
Yes.
just wanna throw one thought out there because I just released this week's podcast today, and it was actually an amazing experience for me to talk to this guy he's a mushroom forager and a forest educator. And what struck me about the conversation that is sort of related to this is we were talking about what's sustainability versus regeneration. Sustainability, people usually think of, oh, well, I'm just going to take as much as I need and put back that much. But he was talking about it from a perspective of why don't we take what we need but put back more or inspire the growth of more. And he gave the example of hunting for lobster mushrooms, which is this very unique kind of mushroom that grows in certain conditions. And what he does is he takes some of the mushrooms from one location and he cuts off the tops and then takes that rooted end and he finds another condition that was similar, similar slope, similar shade, sunshine, etc. And he plants those and he grows new lobster mushrooms in that new location. So he's actually spreading the abundance. And I thought, oh my gosh, what a cool concept. It's not just about, replacing what we're taking. It's about how do we grow the abundance for everybody? And
Mhm.
the beauty of how mushrooms are a perfect symbol of connectedness, of how we're all one. And you see how they work underneath the soil and they're, these mycelium are connecting trees together and plants together and they're getting the nutrients from rocks even and the soil and bringing it to all these plants. I was just like, wow, this is so cool.
That is cool. That is cool. It sounds like a concept that I haven't dug into too much, but I keep wanting to. Is there's people that talk about building food forests, where
Yes.
apparently the plants, if you've got the right plants together, that they actually kind of like multiply on their own. I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, there's so much to learn. I mean, there's forest bathing, there's food forest, there's what actually I'm going to do. I have my own little house gardens around the house, even though we have this wonderful farm down here. I'm going to actually go into the forest this spring and take some of that soil and bring it to my garden because I know that there's going to be all kinds of wonderful mushroom spores and mycelium in there that will be helpful for my house gardens.
Wow, awesome. I love it. Well, it has been a joy to have you here with us today. And
Thank
hopefully,
you.
folks will go and look for your website and your podcast. And definitely, once we get this posted, I want you to put that information in the comments as well so people
Absolutely.
can get to it easily.
I would love to.
Thank you so much, Amy, and thank you for everybody in our group who is keeping up with our interviews and what we've got going on. We'll see you all in the next interview. Until then, have a fabulous day.